Okay, you're on.
Now, I need to introduce you. Great. So, Trevor, welcome along to the meeting. Thanks a lot for coming out to Wynnum today. Today we're going to hear a different twist on how to win over more customers, and it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Trevor Dixon. I was chatting with Trevor earlier, and he certainly thinks differently to many people. He posed a few questions for us to consider. First off, what is your brand really saying about you? Does social media have a place in the world of business marketing? And really, how is it that Paris Hilton could be famous just for being Paris? Today we're going to hear why we have to talk less to be heard more, how to drastically cut our advertising costs, how to communicate to more people more often with more success, how to multiply interest levels tenfold with prospects, and how to increase sales without getting into discounting. Trevor specialises in the professional service firm market, working with accountants, lawyers and financial planners to articulate their value to customers. Get ready to listen, ponder, and decide for yourself. Please make Trevor welcome.
Okay.
There you go.
Hey, command the market. Demand a premium price. That's a big statement to make, and premium pricing is not for everybody. One of the things that I learnt in the army is that I had a little bit of what soldiers call bird poop sitting on your shoulder. I was an officer in the army, and with rank on your shoulder, it's easy to demand respect. One of the more difficult things to do is to actually command that respect from your troops, and I knew I'd reached that point when my diggers called me boss, not sir. Why should we be looking at doing things differently today and looking at how we communicate our story in the marketplace is quite different. The world has changed. I mentioned before that the internet, the World Wide Web, has now been in our lives for over 20 years, and young students coming out of school today, they have lived with the World Wide Web all their lives. The way that... Yep, I'll just wait.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I hate interrupting.
Yeah. It's informal today anyway, so that's fine.
What was it? Something like... Yeah. Okay.
It's the beauty of iMovie. As
Sorry.
part of the world
Sorry.
has changed today, you can cut in and out.
Well, yes, I haven't been doing that, but perhaps I'll have to start.
Excuse me.
Yeah, that's no worries, Lynn. No problems at all. One of the ways that you have to connect to people is to all be comfortable, and being comfortable in what we're doing today is as important as connecting in the marketplace, so no problems at all. So the world is changing completely. The access to information today is at people's fingertips. In the past, when we didn't know something, we'd go and ask our father, and dads are usually the fountain of knowledge in most households, and when they don't know the answer, the stock standard reply is, go ask your mother. Today, the stock standard reply is, I'll just Google it. And the world is changing completely. Why should we be looking at doing things right here and right now? Why don't we wait? I think that the economy is dictating the necessity for us changing the way that we market ourselves today. In banking, Justine, I think you'd be aware from your customer base that there are two types of businesses out there at the moment. There are those that are going gangbusters and just can't keep up with the pace of what's coming in their door. And there's the others that are going, the global financial crisis, I don't know when it's going to end, it's just doom and gloom. And at the moment, it is a complete and utter two-paced economy. So in either camp, if you've got not enough money to market your business because you're in the doom and gloom camp, or you don't have enough time to market your business because things are going so fast, now is the time to look at positioning yourself to command your market for the long term. If we can spend less money to bring in more clients, and those clients spend more money with us, to my mindset, that's the ideal pipeline of new work coming into our business. A little bit about myself. At the age of 29, like most people in life, I had a huge decision to make. Not necessarily at that age point, but I'm sure all of you at different times have had to sit down and go, where am I heading in life? What decisions do I need to make at the moment? I was a full-time manufacturing manager working for a food company. I was working almost full-time as well in the army in a regular infantry battalion. And I know this area where we are at the moment in the Bayside quite well because I was running 13 martial arts schools out in this area at the time. And in 1997, the Howard government decided, when they got re-elected, to abolish what was called the Ready Reserve scheme in the Army. And I had to make a decision, do I go full-time permanently in the Army? Do I step out and go back into the General Reserves and just do Tuesday nights and weekend service in the Army? Or do I look at making a change and run full-time martial arts schools and make my living out of that? What I decided to do was none of them, and stepped out of all of them completely. I moved interstate. I made a complete break from everything that I was doing, and I decided that what I wanted to do was go into business for myself. And that's what I did at the age of 29. The mistake I made, though, is that I didn't understand truly what it was that I wanted to achieve in life. So over the years, I've been in a number of different businesses. I have run a 24-hour roadhouse. I've run a national music distribution company. And my last business has been an international landscaping firm. I've done lots and lots of different things, but the thing that was missing in my life is the purpose behind why I was doing everything. And that's why I do what I do today. I have a burning desire to connect people for one reason, and that reason is wholly and solely to ensure that we maintain and keep the ethos of our Australian culture. During the recent floods, we saw all the volunteers coming out of the woodwork. There were 70,000 registered volunteers with Brisbane City Council during the floods. There was probably equally that number of people not registered. And I remembered back to when we first came to Australia in 1974. We arrived by boat, and 6 days after settling into Brisbane, the skies opened and we were welcomed with the 1974 flood to Australia. At that time, everybody knew each other and doors weren't locked. You went around and you helped your neighbour, and it was just the ethos and the way of doing things. I can see that between then and today, our ethos is shifting and we're becoming more insular, but we still have that intrinsically within our society. And my driving passion in life now is to ensure that I articulate and ensure that we maintain that in everything that I do, so that we don't lose that culture. I've seen it in the work I've done internationally, where you have large populations, and because of the constraints of space, people distance themselves from others purely and simply because it's so hard to find that space to yourself. And I see that as a potential trap in our culture. So that's the thing that's changed for me in my life, is that purpose in everything that I do. Before we get into talking about how to connect and articulate your story, just a few little things. Some people think that it's all too hard and the technology is too difficult to get across to be looking at using things like social media today. I have trained 75-year-old Vietnam veterans on how to use social media and use it exceptionally well. Age is not a barrier to learning new things, and in business, I think we have the necessity and the obligation to look at changing. The other thing that I'd like to just put out on the table before we get into it is that I look at things and question them for myself and really consider the things that I talk about. But the knowledge that I've picked up has come from a lot of other different people as the basis for me forming my own opinions. Guys like Seth Godin with Tribes, We Need You to Leaders, Stephen Covey with the 7 Highly Habits of Effective People, and someone who you may not know, but I'll pay respect to him here today as well, Matt Church from the Thought Leaders community in Sydney. They're some of the guys that I've really picked up on different things over the years and have helped me to form my opinions and a lot of the information that I talk about today. Does anybody have any questions at this stage of any expectations or observations about where they think we might head today before we get into things? I'd just like to put it out there that if you do, feel free to jump in. It's a pretty relaxed environment and I'm very comfortable if you've got something that you'd like to ask while we're going along. Okay. The world is definitely changing. There are more SMSs each and every day than there are people on the planet. There are over 8 billion SMS text messages sent every day.
My daughter sends most of them.
Your daughter?
She's 12.
I was going to ask, has anybody contributed to that today already?
Well, I just got one,
Yes.
so I have
sent
to
two.
vibrate.
It's staggering. What we were talking about earlier before you arrived is that Apple iPhone only account for around 5-6% of the mobile phone market, and the transition into smart technology is happening rapidly, but Nokia are the #1 mobile phone providers in the world. Apple makes more money on their smartphone technology that they put into their own pocket than Nokia make out of commanding the volume on the market. And that's what I'm talking about with commanding a premium price. Okay? It's all about making sure that you get the return for the value that you deliver. It's not all about turning over volume and creating a huge amount of work for yourself purely and simply to have revenue. Okay? The New York Times, it's produced and released each day. There's more information in 1 week's worth of New York Times than a man living in the 19th century would acquire in his entire lifetime in 1 week. That's more information than mankind amassed over the previous 5,000 years. The amount of information that's out there today is just absolutely staggering. The most tweeted event in the history of mankind was the FIFA 2008 World Cup final between Spain and Holland. Spain won 1-0. Hang on a minute. No, I'm wrong. I'm out of date on that one already. The most tweeted event was the assassination of Osama bin Laden. Oh, hang on. No, I'm wrong. It's already out of date again. The most tweeted event with over 8,000 tweets per second was Beyonce when she announced that she was pregnant on MTV. I'll make a prediction that Stephen Jobs...
I'll have something more important to talk about.
The whole point of that is that there is just so much content out there. How do you communicate your message through all of that traffic? And that's a perfect illustration, Judy, is that there is just so much nonsense out there. Twitter, off to get my hair done and have a cup of coffee with the girls. That was what most people's perceptions were of Twitter when we first heard about it. What's your view on Twitter today? What do people think of microblogging? Anyone have an opinion, an observation,
I
or a
still
question?
think of Twitter as that. I know it's more than that, but frankly, having to do so many things every day does not fit into my my work
I
ethic.
don't have that
The time?
Yeah.
Yep.
I know you can use things as like TweetDeck where you send it to all of your things and things like that, but then I have to take time out of my schedule to learn about that, and it's got to wait. Basically, I've got more urgent priorities
Yeah.
than telling people that I'm off to here and having a coffee and da-da-da. So
That's the way I feel.
yeah, I use Facebook and try and put important messages on it.
Yeah.
But Twitter, I just
Yeah.
don't have time.
I probably am the opposite. I have to make time because this generation that is our customers now are going to be my livelihood. If I do not connect, I am outdated. So I just have to make time. It's the way it goes.
Who's heard of Professor Howard Gardner and learning channels? Okay. Maybe There? Vaguely. Okay. Who's heard of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP?
Yes.
Okay. Who's heard of auditory, visual and kinesthetic with the way that people connect and touch and feel? Okay. That's all Howard Gardner's work. Okay. Now, most people are aware of the base level of learning channels with auditory, kinesthetic and visual. Okay. And that basically is saying that you understand, Justine, that everybody out there, I've got to connect to them. Okay? Now, Judy, you're saying, I just like Facebook and that's the way I connect. Okay? And I think that there is a good point to actually illustrate that one of the critical things with connecting with people is it's not about me. It's all about them. And how do they learn and assimilate knowledge? Now, if we're looking at learning channels, the base level is listening, seeing or touching. Okay? That's auditory, kinesthetic and visual. Okay? Coming up to a higher level of the way that people acquire and assimilate and understand knowledge is we move through numerate, literate and interpersonal, which is saying that some people like numbers, some people like to read and some people like to actually communicate and talk to another person to learn. And then the highest layer of learning channels is existential, abstract and intrapersonal. Okay? Now, that there is someone, an existential person is someone that really likes to get into the real detail of understanding where the content is coming from, and they're evidentiary-based people. They need to know that what they're being told has substance behind it. Abstract people, I fit into this category. They're the people that are just everywhere all the time, and where can I find information and learn things, and what's new and great for me to actually listen to. And then intrapersonal people, they're the people who need to find out the traffic that's happening amongst other people and see what's actually trending and moving and happening around circles. So that's learning channels. And that's where social media fits into the equation. It's all about how we communicate our message the way that other people, our customers, want to get the information. And that's why I use Twitter to come into that topic, because most people see micro-blogging the same as they see text messaging. It's all short message guff that's for all the yuppies and the young kids, and they all talk in this. It's like the Americans with the Negro language, okay? All of their subculture, and that's the way that most people see Twitter and micro-blogging as a subculture that's not mainstream. The reality is that our customers are now entering into that space, and that's the way that they want to get their information. TweetDeck, we talked about before. TweetDeck is an aggregation source. And one of the biggest challenges that we have is finding out, and David, you talked about this earlier, what's interesting. Okay? How do we find out what's happening and what's going on? Now, Beyonce on MTV saying that she was pregnant, okay, that was a huge opportunity for us to connect to our customers. The thing that's critical, though, is that what's happening in trafficking and interesting, we need to know that that's going on in the first place. What I want to move on to as my second point is that we need to articulate our value and solve problems for our customers to actually connect with them. So we can aggregate information, but what we need to do then is take what's interesting, whether we create that ourselves or we tap into what's actually interesting and going on out there at the moment, and articulate our values around that back to our customers. Now, I talk a lot about maintaining the Australian ethos and what's happening in the world at the moment with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, with Mubarak in Egypt, and now moving into the Transitional Council in Egypt. Everything that's happening at that global stage, that's trafficking on the internet. And it's the social media that has been instrumental in the people connecting with each other to overthrow and actually have a revolution in the first place. But from my perspective, what I'm doing is finding out that trafficking that's happening out there, and I'm bringing in and I'm re-communicating it that, hey, isn't it fantastic that we live in a society that we actually have these values in the first place? So I'm tapping in to the interesting traffic that's happening out there in the first place. Okay? So that's one of the ways that you use TweetDeck, to actually aggregate the information. Now, if you're using Facebook and you actually have a preferred channel yourself already, one of the ways that you can hit the other spaces is to actually install what are called APIs, application product interfaces. You can install the Twitter API in Facebook, so that when you do a Facebook post, it will automatically send that to your tweet site. And if you hate Twitter, or you hate Facebook, or you hate MySpace, or you hate YouTube, or you hate Flickr, there's that many of them out there at the moment, it doesn't matter what your preferred learning channels are anymore. The beauty is that now you can stick to your learning channel, but use that as the user interface that you connect to the learning channels of your customers. Now that's a whole field in and of itself to actually get into writing blog articles and interfacing that through all the social media. Okay? I've touched on that today, but in the interest of brevity, I'll probably pull up on that point just at the moment, unless anybody's got anything that they want to burning ask about interfacing social media and aggregating information and rebroadcasting. Everyone pretty comfortable? Have I hit the learning channels?
We're about 5 minutes out.
5 minutes to go?
Learning channels.
Yeah. I'm relaxed. I can pull up now, and I'll work in with whatever time you need to, David. Okay? The last thing then that I'd like to move on to is value. Okay? One of the huge problems that business to business suffers from is that none of us like to be sold to. Who here loves being a salesman? Yeah?
Sorry.
Yeah?
Sorry.
Yeah?
Oh,
Things in my
sorry,
blood.
I do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've always liked
Now I'll
selling.
twist that. Who likes being sold to?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. You're about 5% of the market space.
I won't buy unless I'm sold to.
Yeah? Okay. So you're a consummate sales
Yeah.
professional in that regard. Okay. The reality is, though, that 95% of the market do not like being sold to. We're not natural salesmen. Okay. And I don't work in this space. Okay. So I could be quite blatant here because I know that it's not a selling environment that we're in. But I run a program called Don't Sell Ice to Eskimos. And the reason I mention that is that it's a huge shift to move into how we actually have everybody within our organisation of the mindset that I can actually create sales without selling. Okay? Now, the simplest way to start exploring this for yourself and then to bring it back to telling your story in the marketplace with all of the social media that we talked about is delivering value is all about understanding the problems of our clients. Selling is all about describing the benefits of our product, service or idea. Who here has sat down and ever contemplated, beyond the benefits of what you do, what's really going on in the lives of our customers and what we're really accomplishing for them? Now, I won't get you to answer that. I just want you to think about that, okay? Because that's pretty personal. I'll take it into my field with accountants. Okay? Accountants provide compliance. Who here likes getting their tax return done?
It's a positive result.
Who here likes doing their GST return and ensuring that their compliance is up to date? Now, the really deep question is who loves paying for that? Now I've hit home. It's a necessity, isn't it? You don't have a problem paying for the service, but are you willing to pay for it because you really love being compliant?
Yes.
You do?
I do compliance well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty compliant as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I can find more things to make you compliant on, you'd happily pay me money?
Within reason.
Okay. What I'd like you to think about is what are the problems of your customer? Compliance is an obligation. the problems of the customer are more to do with what's happening in their world. Now, to give you a good example of that is acquisitions and sales. If you're going through an acquisition and growing your business, accountant A and accountant B can both do, because they're professionals and that's the basis for their industry, can both do the compliance to meet your obligations to ensure that that sale goes through. When I'm growing my business, I'm time poor and I want to transact the sale, the purchase, in a timely manner so that I can go on to my next acquisition. If accountant A and accountant B are equal on compliance, they both have the same benefits in product. My problem is time. I want to transact quickly. Accountant A doesn't specialise in acquisitions and sales, so it's going to take 2 months to process the compliance aspect of my paperwork. Accountant B only deals in acquisitions and sales and can do it in 2 days. Both are compliant and able to fulfil their professional obligations. Who, though, solves my problems? Accountant B, who can do it in 2 days. Okay? So that's what problems are as opposed to benefits. The benefits is the compliance. The problems are what's happening in my world and what's important to me. And it's an aspect that very few of us in business actually sit down and take the time to look at where am I building the depth and relationship with my customers to truly understand what's going on in their worlds and the problems that I'm solving for them. If you take that time to go down that path, you have the opportunity to command the premium price in your niche market in that space. So what I'd like to leave you with then is who feels like they would like to spend more time to get a better price in the marketplace and to communicate their story out into the marketplace better. I think probably most of us would say that. Okay. Who thinks that they can do it? I know that it's not a difficult process. Okay. I know that everybody sitting here can do it. The challenge is just to begin. Start doing it, and all of us that are in business have enough basic skills to actually get out there and take the approach of telling the story and solving the problems of our clients as a starting point, and only get better at it on your own. Okay? Now, there's an old adage, and we're at breakfast at the moment, that the chicken is interested in breakfast, but the pig is committed. If you're going to look at telling your story in the marketplace and solving problems for your clients, you want to make a commitment to doing it. Don't be interested in doing it. I don't work in the business to business space personally, but I'm more than happy if any of you want to contact me to have a further conversation any time. No obligation at all on doing that. Okay? What you can also do is subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll get regular information on the sort of topics that I'm talking about today, so that where I'm very focused on accountants and lawyers, a lot of the message, which is why I come around and talk to groups like this, a lot of the message is relevant in business to business, and it fits in with my purpose of ensuring that we connect to each other on an ongoing basis to ensure that we don't lose our ethos as a society. And I'd like to pass back to you on that comment, and if anybody has any questions or anything that they'd like to explore, the floor is yours, David.
Absolutely. Great. Well, we've got about another 9 minutes of the official meeting to go. Anybody have any questions?
Yes. It's social media.
Yes?
It's, for me, not business. I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not on Facebook.
Yep.
Because of that professional thing. I hate this blurred line thing, and because it's social, my message is just overwhelmed by all this Beyonce nonsense, and I can't. No, I haven't actually tried to be heard above that noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I see it as unprofessional. To be social is to be unprofessional. The other thing, of course, is that they're not my target market.
I think that the comment that I would make to that is that you've got to understand your customers. And Justine, early on in the piece, made the observation that her customers are in that social space and they're having those social conversations. I agree completely with you, and that's why I made the comment about off to have a cup of coffee and get the hair done with the girls, because there is a huge social element to social media. That's how it started.
And aren't they saying that if businesses are imposing on our social space, we hate them?
No, what I would say to that is give you an example. There is a lawyer in Knoxville, Texas, called Stephen Boundy. 6 weeks ago, a Facebook profile was launched on Stephen Boundy. Personal injury lawyer, is an ambulance chaser. Okay. In the first week of it being launched, there were 4,000 likes on his site. I did my radio show the week after and it was at 8,000. Last week I checked in and gave an update and it's at 22,000 likes. The difference with the social space and the business space in areas like Facebook is that you need to set up a business profile. Your personal profile, keep it separate and detached and don't do business on that profile. And keep that distinction between I'm a professional and this is my social space. Physically make that change. Okay? Now the interesting part about Stephen Boundy is that he didn't launch his Facebook business profile. A student at Knoxville University launched it. And he thought that it would be shut down by Stephen Boundy because he was taking on his identity theft we were talking about. He was taking on his persona. The reality is that Stephen Boundy understood connecting to his customer base and took it to the next level where he started engaging himself on the site. There's a company in the US called Creative Connections. Does anybody here know what scrapbooking is?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Scrapbooking's huge.
Yes,
Okay. I'm talking to lawyers and accountants. Do you think they're interested in scrapbooking? Okay. Very relevant point about business, though, is that Creative Connections have 60,000 fans on their Facebook business page. They were put in for best brand in Minnesota in the US. So there's a competition organised to find, might have been the Chamber of Commerce, it was someone like that, organised the competition. One of their customers nominated them for the best brand in Minnesota. Now, the products for scrapbooking are as available at Target as they are at this little business. Target have about 4.8 million fans liked on their business profile on Facebook. Creative Connections outpolled and became the #1 brand in Minnesota because they're connected to their customer base and are delivering the value to their customers. Target are in the volume, turnover traffic and not connecting. So that's a real example of how building a social media presence in your target market niche can be extremely powerful for you. And it's the way that you can communicate and articulate your value to your customer base. But I think you have to, I think you're very right there, Julia. You've got to be very, very careful of blurring between social and professional. And you can do it on Facebook. What I do on Twitter, for example, is I work on a ratio roughly of 6:1. Occasionally I'll do something personal about myself that's social because people need to connect to me as an individual like we're doing this morning. But the vast majority of my Twitter content is going out as professional content that is providing value and delivering solutions to the customers that I'm working with so that they can implement things from what I'm communicating to. Does that help?
Yeah, I see it mostly as social, so I'm not in that space.
Like I was talking about with Judy earlier, there's no need for you to go into that space yourself. Is anybody writing a blog at the moment and telling their story that way? Okay. You can go on and set up a free account on eBlogger in Google. So when you go into Google, who's done a Google search, anyone? Sorry. When you go into Google, hit the drop-down arrow across the top that says more. Okay, you've got mail and calendar across the top. Hit the drop-down that says more and go to Blogger. And you can set up a free blogging account and just start telling your story and just doing it. Okay? But what you can do is install the APIs and have that blog post feed through and go to Twitter and Facebook automatically. Okay? And there's a lot of other tools. TweetDeck's one of them. Okay? There's a whole myriad of tools that when you're starting to get into this space that you should be using. But now's not the time and space to go into that. Today's about getting started.
We found it really difficult because I'm not very technical at all, but I have older children that are very technical, and I found it very difficult to get into it. But it wasn't until I went to something and they said, in 10 years' time, our Y generation are going to be 80% of our customers.
Yeah.
If we do not connect on their terms now, we're going to be out of business.
Yeah.
And as much as it's uncomfortable to do, and I still find it, I just have 4 other board members that help me with it.
What do you say?
Crap. Because that's what they want to know. They want to know crap.
And see,
But that's what they want, because it's not about us. It's not about what we want to say. It's about what they want to hear. They want to know that, you know, I've just walked into, you know, a shopping centre and I'm having a coffee. That's what they want to know, because that's them, and it's not me. It's like, but if I don't connect, my fear is in 10 years' time, I don't have a business and I don't have a job because I've missed the target. Because if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it.
So what Justine's saying there is that you've got to understand the problems you're solving for your customers. And I'll bring it back onto topic, because I think it's a brilliant illustration. Justine is solving the problems of her customers. You need to connect to the community base, and they want to talk community gossip. They do. Which is what you're doing.
And it's a value proposition for our customers. They don't care. They never even ask what rates or anything we're on. They don't care.
You're making that relationship.
I can email them and text them. They can text me. They don't care. I could be the dearest place I could go. They would still come to us.
Yeah, I know.
Weird.
In the software world,
yes.
Julie, the perfect opportunity for you to communicate to your customer base and solving their problems, you're in the software world. You could have had so many articles about Stephen Jobs this last week, like I've done, actually bringing it back into accountants and lawyers. But the amount of content that's out there in the software world do I agree with this? Yep, that's awesome. And here's some of my experience on top of that, which is what I've done today, talking about Stephen Covey, Howard Gardner, Seth Godin. I've taken that information at a base level and I've added my own unique insight into that information. You can do that with the software world and then re-communicate that back out. And you could do an article every couple of hours with the amount of content out there in the software space. I'd highly recommend, though, that you start at a cyclic level that you're comfortable with. It might be once a month. It might be once a fortnight. It might be once a week. But really, really important if you start, maintain the consistency, because people will get used to wait. Who remembers Batman and Robin, the TV series, when it was on the television?
Oh, yeah.
Same bat time, same bat channel. Why did they do that? To make sure that you were back there again the next day at that time. And people get, and this is Stephen Covey's work, habits are developed. People get into the ritual cyclic nature of forming habits.
Because I'm thinking that my target market is people who have the ability to make the decision, and they're about 40 plus.
To make the decision about what?
Whether to spend money on training.
Training on what?
Computer applications.
What computer applications?
Miles, Word, Office.
See what I've just done to you? I've done the Google search on you. It's called Google Earth, okay? And you were up here at planet level, and to communicate your story, you've got to be communicating your story down to who truly is the niche that you're wanting to connect to. So your niche is getting into the MyOb word software space, not software training. And that's a really important distinction to understand if you're going to connect to people. There is so much of a filter going on out there that if you're sitting with your content above the filter, you won't get through it. The filter of the people that are going to... Because you're not going to get to your people. your people are going to come to you through the filter called the internet.
Yeah, look,
Okay.
I had some feedback yesterday from a potential new customer. He said, I don't understand what you do. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I thought I was really
So
clear
frustrating,
about what
yeah.
I do,
yeah.
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 but
Yeah.
he wasn't clear about what I did.
Problems. What do you
Yeah.
solve?
And I've got the technology and the ability to do it. I just haven't got the interest. But I'm here because I know I have to do it. And I'm, you know, like a lot of older people, really resentful of, oh, this is so boring.
I'll answer two questions that
I find
come
it
up.
the same, just incredibly boring talking about